What's up, everybody? I'm Dr. Weber. Today, we're going to talk about potential modifications and adaptations you may experience in adaptive PE. We're going to talk about four different components, including equipment, rules, environment, and instruction today. So, we're going to first talk about equipment in adaptive PE and how it can be changed or utilized. So, first off, you can have large or small pieces of equipment, okay, based on their capabilities. So, for instance, if you utilize a wheelchair, you might want a bigger soccer ball or even use an exercise ball in place of the soccer ball so that they can kick something that is a little bit higher off the ground. You might have to make things smaller in size. You might have to add balloons instead of balls for catching in case the individual isn't able to have really fast hands when they're trying to catch a ball or if they're catching something for the first time. Something like a scarf, something that is very lightweight, is a good use of equipment because those can be caught and they are very safe. I like to look at equipment and think of first safety. So, first off, you want to think how safe is the piece of equipment? Is it torn? Does it need to be thrown out? Is it viable for PE? Is it something that you created yourself? Because you can get in trouble if you're creating your own equipment and it's not regulated and you're experimenting. That's something we don't want to do. We want to make sure that we have brand new equipment if possible or lightly used. And if it is used, we want to try to keep it safe as we can. So, like we said, we talked about there's large pieces of equipment we can use. Um, Specifically, exercise ball can be used for punching, kicking. Exercise ball can be used for rolling it and pushing it. Exercise balls are a big piece of equipment that are in most gyms and you've heard of before. The parachute, a big piece of equipment. It's very bright. The equipment stands out. It can be used for more than just parachute games. It can be used for target games, especially for people with visual impairments who need something very bright, very big to see. So you can use things like sheets and towels, and you can create holes in them for targets. This will help them with throwing, and also it'll give them bigger perception of the task at hand. When you keep things small, or if you don't have big visuals, sometimes it's hard for individuals who have visual impairments to see those exercises. If the individuals have visual impairments, you might want to add in bells or whistles in devices that allows them to hear where the object is coming from, or adding in bells inside of balloons to make them more interactive, and add in a stimulus. Sometimes the stimulus of a bell or something that is auditory will get the learner's attention. You can think about things like weight and size of objects. So you might have to get a lighter medicine ball instead of a heavy medicine ball. You might have to get a very lightweight basketball instead of the, the regular basketball. Sometimes they're not able to push them with enough pressure. So you might have to get something that's a little bit more buoyant and something that bounces a little bit easier than a basketball. When it comes to soccer, sometimes we want to take the air out of the soccer ball so it doesn't travel as far on the gymnasium court, because we know those balls will travel very fast. So if they're a little bit flatter, sometimes that helps our individuals when it comes to going too fast while they're dribbling. You can have equipment on fish line. Now, you want to be very careful that you don't have a fish line or a string set up to where someone can trip over it or get caught in it, because they're they can be dangerous devices in the gym. But if you have a string or a line connected and you can add a wiffle ball, this will give the individual a trajectory perception, meaning that they'll know where the ball is going and where they need to be in space and time in order to catch something. So, a ball through a string line, you can use bigger size bats instead of the regular size bat, something like a bigger size wiffle ball instead of a normal size baseball. You can use balloons and noodles instead of bats and baseballs. So if you want to keep it safe in the gym, but give them lots of trials, you might want to use a short noodle. Other good pieces of adaptive equipment are the battle ropes. Those are great for individuals with lower body impairments. They allow them to get an upper body cardiorespiratory exercise and also It can be used as a power exercise and even strength endurance exercise. So, first off, we want to talk about making sure it's safe. Then we want to make sure that it's either bright or colored or it fits the capabilities of the learner. Okay, you can also have different surfaces, different um, texture with the ground. You can have different length and resiliency of equipment. You can have different height of equipment, sound of equipment, shape of equipment. So there's many different ways you can adapt and modify equipment. Let's go ahead and talk about the rules in adaptive PE. So first off, I want to make sure that we're either providing or we're making sure that we're providing understandable rules. The rules are simply understood. They're not too many rules, and you're not confusing people when you're explaining the rules. This is probably the most important part about giving people rules is that they're clear and they understand them. Because if they're not clear or they're complex or there's questions about the rules, and the rules are going to be broken, and then you're going to have to worry about behavior management as it comes to the rules or safety, right? So basically, we want to have rules in place for safety precautions. We want to have rules in place to make the game understandable, right? And then also we want to use rules for things like boundaries. Okay, we want to make sure that we're giving them, the right amount of time or effort needed to perform a skill or task. So we may change the length of time. We may change based on their abilities. The rules can change drastically if we need to, so we can stop the game and say, all right, instead of the volleyball um, going over and not hitting the ground, we're going to allow the volleyball to bounce off the ground, or we're going to allow the ball to bounce as many times as we want, unless it's rolling. And then, unless it's rolling, and then it's an actual point. So you can keep games continuous so there isn't a stoppage and transition time from start and stop. So trying to make games continuous, having less outs, less people sit out during an exercise or workout, so we wouldn't do something that would tag you're out, you're done. You would just get back into the game. So making the rules sensible, logical, reasonable, and comprehensible. We want to take also in consideration the individual's behavior. So when it comes to the individual's behavior, what's going to increase their happiness, what's going to increase their social skills, what's going to increase their intellect, what's going to increase their psychomotor skills. We want to take their behavior in account. What that basically means is we're not performing exercise or activities that lower social competence or make the obstacles harder to do. We want to make it so that it ties with their behavior so that there's a happiness level and a self determination level when it comes to the rules. We can also talk about attitude. Sometimes the attitude of the individuals, if it's a very positive attitude, you might want to do more exercises that are maybe less I guess less motivating to do, so like your harder exercises. But if they have lots of if they don't have a lot of motivation, if they're not feeling positive that day, maybe you're doing something like dance. So maybe you're just changing the rules of how you're going to plan the exercises based on their emotional response. If I know that I get everyone happy when we play sharks and minnows, that might be a game I do every single class just because I know I'm going to get an emotional response out of it. If I know there's an exercise or activity that I'm going to get a low emotional response, or maybe people are going to kind of grunt and groan, I might just take that exercise or activity out of the lesson plan in the future. So, based on my individuals and participants' behaviors, based on their emotions, their capacities, capabilities, I'm going to change the rules and I'm going to make them as easy as possible to understand. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about the environment. Okay. The environment is going to be things like the gymnasium. So you're going to have either the gymnasium or the pool setting. When it comes to the pool setting, you want to make sure that it is bright. It's not in a dark indoor lit facility. That's a very bright facility so you can see the entire pool, especially. You want to make sure that you have the right precautions like a lifeguard, that you want to go over the pool rules. You want to make sure that the environment is safe. So if the dock is slippery, that nobody is walking, and nobody should ever be running around the dock or the pool. When it comes to the gymnasium, we want to make sure that it isn't too overstimulating. So sometimes the music can be too loud because it echoes inside the gym when you play music. So you might have individuals with sensitive hearing who will wear headphones or bigger headphones to cover the noise because of areas such as the gymnasium. So keep that into a perspective and ask those individuals questions like, "Hey, uh, how does things sound right now? Do you want me to turn the music down? Is everything good? Give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs down. If it's too loud, I can get people to quiet down for you if you need to." So people's um, stimulatory effect based on lighting could be overstimulating when it comes to noise. Could be too many people close together. So making sure that environment is safe, inclusive, and spread out if needed, especially for people that might not want to be super close to others or be in loud spaces. So when it comes to environment, we want to think boundaries as well. So I'll put boundaries here. So what's really important is making sure that you have cones in place during games where individuals can and can't go to keep them in a space that is contained and safe. Now, this is for most games and activities you're going to perform. There should be some boundaries. You want to use cones. You want to use lines on the court. So this is really important for boundaries and the environment as well. And then if you have mats, lay them out accordingly before the lesson so that they're arranged in order. That will limit the transition time from getting the mats out. And then have a system in place of how to get the mats stacked so that everyone's not trying to stack the mats at the same time. So changing the environment to make it easier when it comes to transition time is really important. So making sure that you are coordinating kind of like a plan to keep everyone moving and flowing throughout the lesson plan, as opposed to having strict stop times and having people stop what they're doing, put all the equipment together, which may take 5 or 10 minutes of instruction time. So making sure that the environment is ready and ready to go. Okay. Now we're mainly going to talk a lot about the modifications and adaptations when it comes to instruction. Okay. And there's lots of different types of instructional styles. So we're going to talk about instructional styles today. When it comes to instructional styles, there is a direct or a command approach to teaching where you're going to have the structure in place. You're going to have an order of the lesson plan. You're going to tell exactly what the students to do. It's going to be a lot of group exercise, fitness, group activities, things that everyone's doing together, or it could even be station based. But basically, the instructor is going to tell the students what to do, how to do it during the lesson plan. Then you have what we call practice. So when individuals practice the skills and they do the skills themselves in their own space and time, we call this practice. This allows the individuals to go at their own pace. So it might not necessarily mean I want you to do 15 toe taps. I might just say dribble in space and perform any soccer skill that you'd like. So letting them practice the skills that we just learned without telling them exactly what they have to perform. This allows everyone to perform the skills that they'd like to that involve the actual activity. When it comes to the next type of instruction, we want to think about reciprocal learning or partner learning. So, getting students after the individual skills working together with partners so they can see other people perform the skill and so they can see the failures and successes of other people performing the skills. So, getting them working with partners, helping them when it comes to task analysis. So, this would be a time where they can measure each other's performance when it comes to targeting, when it comes to shooting or passing a ball with the right form or performing the right push-up or exercise assessment with the right criteria. So this would be a good time to get people to work together on evaluating each other's form, and also learning how to perform skills together, like passing the ball in soccer, passing the ball in lacrosse, basketball, throwing the ball back and forth like you are in a baseball game, that type of thing. Okay. Then we have inclusive or individualization of the skill. So allowing individuals to make their own twist on a skill, or allow individuals, just like we were in the practice section, to perform tasks that work best for them. Okay, so giving them an inclusive instruction where people can kind of work on their own individual skills. We can perform this during the practice section, or we can do this right after our warm up time, and we could also end with the activity with them practicing their own skills. Then we have guided discovery. So we allow them to kind of solve problems to questions that we have. So we might say, dribble to the other side of the gym, but you have to use two curved pathways and two zigzag pathways. So allowing them to figure out when they're going to perform those skills across. Or I might say, all right, question might be, how can I get to the other side by performing only plyometric exercises? And they'd have to figure out what plyometric exercises they could perform to get to the other side. So that's giving them a question, and then them having them solve a problem through fitness or physical activity. Then what we have is convergent discovery. So this is going to involve them and allow them to ask questions and to problems that may occur in the gymnasium or in the fitness center that they can try to solve on their own. Like, okay, for instance, I when I land on my foot, I can't balance. So maybe we're gonna make it a point to stick our landings when we're uh, performing our bounce. So having them really evaluate and question themselves, which will lead into learner initiated activities where they would say, hey, I'm having a hard time with accuracy. I want to focus on accuracy today. So I'm going to evaluate my throwing technique, and I'm going to try to create solutions to this throwing issue that I am seeing. The next type of learning would be self teaching. So this would be more lifelong learning where individuals would teach and also teach themselves how to get better and to help others get better in physical fitness or exercise. So when people start taking it on their own accord to work out and then also help other people work out, put in the research, do the reading in the articles, actually put in the consistency, this is going to be that lifelong approach. This is going to be what we eventually want to get as far as outcomes go. We want that self determination when it comes to fitness. Now, the types of instruction that we're going to teach are going to be different ways the teacher is going to interact with the students. So, different types of instructional styles include verbal instruction. So, verbal instruction is basically just telling students what to do through your verbal skills. You can also use task analysis. A task analysis would be giving them a piece of paper that shows what the skill is, how the skill should be performed, and then going through a checklist of how to perform and demonstrate the skill as well as evaluate the skill. So something like the TGMD, where you are assessing someone's ability to get in the batting swing position and then make contact with the ball with a rotational criteria, with a following through criteria, with a transferring of weight criteria. So if they're able to connect with the ball and go through the appropriate steps, that would be what we would call task analysis. We can use sign language in PE. So if we have an interpreter, we may have someone helping us understand, or we might be able to speak with an interpreter to one of our students. We have peer tutors. So students without disabilities may interact with people with disabilities. That's a nice instructional style when you have their peers working along with them, whether it's in the high school or in the college setting. We have paraeducators, which are teachers that are paid to work specifically either with students with behavioral needs, physical needs, or emotional needs, social needs, that type of thing. So you might have a paraeducator help with your instruction during your classroom. You might have a parent help you out with instruction during an activity program. So there's different instructional types and people, and like I said, you can use verbal, you can use demonstrations. So demonstrations are giving them a visual of what you want them to do. You can use visual cards or picture boards. You can use before this and that scenario. So showing them this is what we're going to do, kick the ball, and then after that, we're going to go on the scooter, which is something you want to do. So showing them picture boards is another method of in adapting our instruction to meet people's disabilities needs. So this was a kind of an overall video on potential modifications and adaptations for environment, rules, environment, and instruction. And I'm just going to kind of recap it real quick for you. Okay. So basically, you have four different components of modifications and adaptations that can occur in the classroom when it comes to adaptive physical activity. The first being equipment. Equipment can be big, it can be small, it can be lightweight, it can be heavyweight, it can be really shiny, very bright or dim. It can make noise. So the equipment can change based on the capabilities and needs of the participant. If it's something that is like a battle rope, something that would be used for people that utilize wheelchairs, you want to think making sure you're getting the equipment for the right person. Then you have things like rules, which are based on the individual's behavior, their cognitive capacity to learn and understand rules. So you want to make sure that you're adjusting it based on the attitude, the emotions, the behaviors of your students, whether it improves their behavior, and if it doesn't, maybe trying to provide games that increase their positivity or enthusiasm. Then we have the environment. So you have the gym and pool environment, making sure you have boundaries, making sure it's well lit, making sure it's safe and inclusive. Then we have instruction. We have different types of styles. We have things like command approach. We have reciprocal approach or partners. We have inclusive approach where people kind of perform their own task during an activity that it goes along their capacities. And then you have actual instructional types like using visuals, using verbal cues only, using picture boards, you having an interpreter or paraeducator there in the classroom. So those would be some modifications, adaptations for instructors. Okay. So if you have questions about any of these components, I'll go into it further. I'm going to go deeper into assessment in a future video, and then also how I structure and plan my adaptive physical activity lesson plans. Let me know if you have questions, and I hope to get back to you.